So I got a weird one for you today, guys. This clip, or this lesson rather, is taken from the libraries of OrlandoDrummer.com. It's from the members area there, and specifically it is from the Detached lesson pack. Now, Detached is a song that was written by drummer and YouTuber Alex Rudinger, good buddy of mine, and he was kind enough to let me use this track for a Meinl performance video that was recorded back in August in Nashville. So the Detached lesson pack effectively breaks down every single section of this song, note for note, how I played it in the original performance. So the section that we're learning today is titled the Left Hand Crash section, because I couldn't think of a better name than that. But it's definitely a cool section. It's got a lot of awesome ideas in it, and I wanted to share this one with you guys so you get an insight as to what these lesson packs actually look like. Specifically, these song breakdown lesson packs are kind of unique. They don't always match the rest of the library, but I just thought this was a cool lesson in a different format, and yeah, I thought you guys would enjoy. Now, if you want to learn the entire song, note for note, with the PDF transcription and, 2 to 3 hours of content breaking down every single note, you can find all of those lessons in the member vaults of OrlandoDrummer.com. And if you're not yet a member, it is an awesome time to start because it is our member appreciation month for the rest of November. And we've got tons of awesome sign-up specials happening, including for our annual members. Everybody is getting a pair of the ClearTune P2 Explorers. These are wireless Bluetooth headphones. If you start or upgrade to an annual membership this month, I will buy and mail these to your front door for free by the new year. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I will see you on OrlandoDrummer.com. Later. Welcome into what is probably going to be the most frustrating part of learning this song. So this section is the left hand crash section. As the title would imply, we're going to be crashing with our left hand over here. I would recommend right off the bat that you have a shorter crash. When I say shorter, I mean not like a big 22-inch crash ride type thing. That's going to be a little bit overkill for this. So I'm using the 19-inch extra dry thin, and I would recommend that you use something a little bit shorter with less sustain, maybe a little bit quieter. It's going to make this a little bit more tolerable because we're going to be riding on this crash quite a bit throughout this lesson. So this takes us from measure 41 through measure 48. So it's a fairly short section, only 8 bars. But what makes this so difficult is that everything is left-hand lead. So ultimately what this boils down to is basically a rock groove syncopation exercise where we're sort of trading some backbeats between our kick drum and our snare, playing around a little bit with ghost notes in some spots, some subdivision work to do. But overall, I would say this is like an upper level intermediate exercise, but it becomes advanced when we have to play this backwards. So again, the frustration level of this gets a lot higher just because it's backwards. Now, I'll give you a little insight as to why I decided to write and record and play this particular section backwards. Really, this is my way of sort of paying respect to the author and producer of this track, which is Alex Rudinger. Now, Alex Rudinger is a notoriously ambidextrous player, meaning he switches all the time from left-hand lead to right-hand lead, and he does it seamlessly. So I thought it would be really cool to put that upon myself in writing these parts here. So that's sort of my nod to Alex. Shout out to him. Awesome drummer, awesome player, and awesome producer as well. Produced a pretty sick track in this case. So in this section, we are going full Alex Rudinger. Everything is basically played with the left-hand lead with the exception of a couple fills, and we'll get into what those are. But again, if you just think of this as like an upper-level intermediate syncopation exercise, it's just that. It's nothing too crazy, but we're swapping hands, and that's what's happening here. So let's kick off on measure 41. So let's just take a look at the first measure here, which you can see is basically 4 quarter notes. Then we had that one little 8th note kick drum snuck in there. This is nothing too bad. So we're gonna have left hand crash with a kick drum underneath it. You can see that's notated as a right hand there. That's just how I happened to come out of the last fill that happened before this, but today we're gonna play it with the left, so don't mind that. So we have a left hand crash with the kick drum underneath it. That's the downbeat of 1. On the downbeat of 2, we're just riding these quarter notes here, so another left hand crash. Then a kick drum that is on the and of beat 2. And that's followed by our backbeat, which is on the downbeat of 3. So that's a right hand on the snare, left hand still on that crash, nice and loud backbeat, and then a quarter note on the downbeat of 4. So again, this is pretty easy syncopation stuff here. Check this out, measure 41. Moving right along to measure 42. So we have a left-hand crash, no kick on the downbeat of 1 here. This is in measure 42. Then we have a kick drum after it that is on the and of beat 1. And then we have our first little weird thing happening inside of beat 2 of measure 42. So this is a 32nd note diddle that's sort of jammed in here right after that left-hand crash on the downbeat of 2. So let me just play for you beats 1 and 2, and I'll stop on the downbeat of 3 of measure 42. And really, that's a melody you could get in your head. So that is beats 1, 2, and then just that downbeat of 3, which is our backbeat in measure 42. So after that, we have a kick drum that is on the and of beat 3. You can see that lone kick drum there. And then in beat 4, we have something very simple happening, but it is also very tricky. So we're going to play effectively a flam or a unison hit. So we have a right hand and a crash together, left hand on the crash, right hand on the snare. But that right hand is going to play 4 16th notes consecutively. Bup, 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 bup. So you can imagine this gets very, very fingery, right? And we're going to end up doing this without any accents. Ideally, I would have liked to have really popped that first snare on the downbeat of 4. But at the tempo where the original song is played, that's not totally possible. So I just look at this as 4 quick accented notes. Just beat 4 of measure 42 would sound like this. Now for me, I actually find that this is easier to speed up and go faster by playing this open-handed because my right hand has so much more control over these more delicate, quicker ghost notes on the snare. So you might find the same thing to be true for you. It's definitely a weird muscle memory thing to work out, but it's nice to have sort of that speed and control for that particular section. So let me play for you measures 41 and 42, just so you can see them on the screen. Then we will keep this thing moving. All right, on to measures 43 and 44. So we have a few more tricky things happening. This is really the core of this syncopation stuff, but it's a lot of recycled ideas or ideas that you'll see within this section sort of happening over and over. So we have on the downbeat of 1 in measure 43, we have kick, kick. So that would be 1 and obviously we're just rocking quarter notes with the left hand on this crash pretty much the entire time. It's not really going to change. Now in beat 2, we again have this 32nd note diddle happening, right, right, so it sort of fills in the blanks inside of beat 2, just how it did in the last measure. We have our backbeat on the downbeat of 3, followed by a kick drum on the and of 3, so this is really nothing we haven't seen before. And then a lone crash with the left hand on the downbeat of 4, followed by a kick drum that is on the and of beat 4. This is nothing we haven't seen already between measures 41 and 42. It's just sort of a rearranged different combination of these ideas. So really slow, let me show you what measure 43 sounds like just by itself. Correction. The very last note of measure 43, I said that was a kick drum. It is not. It is a snare. So we have a displaced backbeat. Now it's not notated as an accent because it's really not quite as loud in the original performance, but you can play it just as loud. It is a second backbeat by all means. So that is the and or the and of beat 4 or the last eighth note of the groove. That is a second snare. Let's slow this thing all the way down and just hear measure 43 exactly as it's written. Really cool section. I think that particular measure, measure 43, has a lot of the characteristics that make up what this section is, what this section feels like. Just that groove in particular, it has that feel that you kind of find in every measure of this section. So measure 43, a really important one to spend some time on. I think if you had that feeling nailed down, it would sort of improve the rest of this section for sure, right? A lot of cool ideas happening in a very short amount of time. So that is measure 43. Let's go on to measure 44. And again, a lot of the same things happening here, especially in the first 3 beats. Nothing we haven't seen. A lone crash on the downbeat of 1. Then we have a kick drum on the and of beat 1. We have our 32nd note ghost note idea, the diddle happening in beat 2. A backbeat on the downbeat of 3. Kick drum on the and that follows that in beat 3. And let's talk about what's happening in beat 4. So beat 4 is a 16th note triplet fill, and this is played at a pretty high tempo in the original performance. What's happening here is just 6 single strokes, 4 and a, boogada, boogada, right? So the last 6 notes are played in triplets, all single strokes, right, left, right, left, right, left. I'm playing 4 of them on my 14-inch floor tom, 2 of them on my 16-inch floor tom, but of course you can disperse those singles within this subdivision however you want. You can orchestrate them any way you could imagine. So let me play for you everything you can see on the screen here, measure 43 and 44 all combined. Not too bad of a section overall. Check it out. All right, on to measures 45 and 46. So this is actually a really stripped down version of what we're playing here. Look how hilariously easy measure 45 is. We have quarter note, quarter note, quarter note, and then 2/8 notes. So this is some baby syncopation stuff. So you'll see that coming out of this fill, I did play a right hand crash, which is over here. And then I went back to the left hand crash immediately after. Whatever works for you in this scenario. I really don't care what crash you play or which hand you play it with. But that's sort of what I had to do as I completed this fill with a right hand. I crashed over here, and then the left hand resumes on the downbeat of 2. So that's what's happening there. Either way, crash and a kick on the downbeat of 1, crash and a kick on the downbeat of 2, crash and a snare for our backbeat, that's on the downbeat of 3, a lone crash on the downbeat of 4, that's with your left hand, and then a kick drum after it. So easy enough. Measure 45 technically would have been played this way. Easy enough. Let's move on to measure 46, the measure on the right-hand side of the screen. So we have another left-hand crash happening alone on the downbeat of 1, a kick drum on the and of 1 that follows it. Our same 32nd note diddle idea, left, right, right, happening in beat 2. Then we have our backbeat on the downbeat of 3, a kick drum that follows it. This is nothing we haven't seen before. A left hand alone on the downbeat of 4, followed by another extra backbeat that happens on the and of beat 4. So let's pay close attention to that extra backbeat that happens there. I'll just play for you everything that we have written on the screen. I know we went kind of fast through this one, but this is by far the most stripped down version of what we're playing in this groove today. So 45 and 46, those two measures on the screen, super slow. Check it out. One slightly tricky thing that happens when you connect these two measures is the upbeat kick drums that take you over top of the beat line. So that would be the and of beat 4 in measure 45 and the and of beat 1 in measure 46. You have this almost like inverted disco thing, right? Those 4 notes that sort of occupy the dead center of these 2 measures you can see on the screen. So that's something to keep in mind, but it's really not the hardest thing in the world, just a funky thing to hear at first. I remember having to work through that. And this same sort of idea, left hand rocking quarter notes and then sort of pushing up the upbeats in between them. We're going to do that in the next 2 measures, which are the last 2 measures of this section. So let's skip over to those. This is measure 47 and 48. So again, a lot of repeating ideas here, especially in measure 47. We've got 2 kick drums, 1 and, again, quarter notes just on the left-hand crash the whole time. We've got our 32nd note diddle with the right hand happening in beat 2. We've got our backbeat on the downbeat of 3, the kick drum that follows it. We have another displaced snare drum that is on the last 8th note of the measure. That would be the and of beat 4. So again, nothing we haven't seen in measure 47. I'll play it just so you can hear it. Nothing new there. That is measure 47. Now let's talk a little bit about measure 48 because I think this might be the trickiest one to get down. So there are not really any backbeats or what I would call backbeats happening here. There is a snare flam that happens on the downbeat of 4, but we're gonna have to work our way up to that. A little bit tricky until we get to that spot. So on the downbeat of 1, we have a left hand crash by itself. We have a kick drum on the and of 1 right after it. Then another kick drum that happens on the downbeat of 2 with a crash. This alone is like a little weird thing to work out. It sounds like this. I had to spend a good 10 minutes just sort of making sense of that particular section. It's really, really funky there. So once we get to the downbeat of 2, then you can see for the next 2 beats of music, beats 2 and 3, we are playing a right hand on the upbeats as an open sloshed hi-hat. So let me play for you very slowly 2 and 3 and of this measure. It's weird, and it's especially weird coming from the measure of groove that we just had before this one. So we'll have to play that one up to speed. I don't know that playing it slowly like that is necessarily going to help you get the overall vibe for this thing. What might be helpful is just to glue it all together and then slow that way down so you can sort of hear the entire phrase in context. And just to talk about the ending here, again, we have this flam that is just both hands on the snare. That is on the downbeat of 4, and then I'm playing bugada, kick, right, left over on the floor tom, which is how we are escaping this section and going into our next section, right? So we're going to end with this kick, right, left, played in triplets, the last 3 available 16th note triplets in this measure. Let me play for you measures 47 and 48, exactly how they're written on the screen. All right, that is our left-hand crash section. I'm going to play this entire thing for you from start to finish just so you can hear this particular section isolated. I know this is a pretty tricky one to get down overall. And this section happens twice in the song, and this is the only lesson that will cover both of those sections. And I picked this section, measure 41 through 48, because this is the slightly harder version. I thought the fills were a little bit more interesting, and some of the syncopations that are happening I thought were also a little bit more interesting. So this does happen in the later section, but if you can play this one, that one should be even easier. It's most of the same ideas, but even more stripped down in some areas. So yeah, let's play our left-hand crash section. We played at a couple speeds, and we will be good to go, guys.